such a pleasure to be able to introduce to you a lady who I have known for a long time, not quite as long as Sean, but she's slightly different age group to Sean. Sorry, not being unfair to Sean. The wonderful Clare Muscutt is, like many of us, a very seasoned professional. This is an individual who has been there and done it and got the sweatshirt. She is an international consultant now and is really leading customer experience and bringing together the incredible population of women that work in customer experience. And if you haven't listened to her Women in CX podcast, once again, you are missing out. And in fact, just seeing Clare on screen always makes me feel as though I'm incredibly unprofessional when I do all of this. So, and it's fascinating to have Clare with us, because I myself, and I think Sean used the word as well, talk about transformation a lot. But Clare is going to share with us her perspective on how transformation might actually be the problem, not the solution. So thank you again, Clare, for giving up your time to be with us this afternoon. The floor is yours.
If I can get all my slides and stuff to work. Can you see the screen, everyone?
Yes,
Someone give me a thumbs up. Oh, awesome. Thanks so much.
You're on. You're on.
What a wonderful introduction. Thanks so much, Ian. And first of all, happy CX Day, everybody. It's absolutely fabulous to be here. And thanks so much to the organisers, especially Olga and Serta, for arranging all of this. So yeah, I'm here to share my perspective on transformation, and that it is indeed, as Ian said, the problem and not the solution. Just in terms of positioning, this is actually the debut of a white paper that I wrote, and I'll give you access to it after the event, but we've only got about 15 minutes, so I'll just be introducing you to the high level concepts. So don't worry if you don't take it all in, you'll be able to refer to the white paper afterwards. And if I do my job right, there should be time for me to do some Q&A at the end, but let's see how we go. Right. First challenge, do my slides work? Okay, oops, too fast. So yeah, let's start with the context, and that is basically that transformation is just all around us these days, whether it's digital or cultural or operational or our own field customer experience. The answer to everything seems to be this radical overhaul. I think because it sounds bold and sexy and really aspirational. But my question is it really the right approach, and do the projects ever really deliver the goods? Now, it's funny that Sean mentioned this one, because you're probably all thinking, I can think of a great example, and that would probably be Apple. But I think Apple's remarkable metamorphosis under Steve Jobs is one clear success story. And it captured people's imaginations because such transformations are exceedingly rare, not because they're actually easily achievable. So what I've been thinking is that, in truth, large-scale episodic changes rarely work due to the cost, the complexity, the leadership, and the timescales involved. And I'm using this phrase, entropy always wins. And I wrote down on a Post-it note to remind myself to say what that word actually means. And it's actually a theory from thermodynamics, but it's about the lack of order and predictability that means that everything will always gradually decline into disorder. And I don't know if you've ever been part of a transformation program, but that's pretty much what happens. Because by the time companies have, I'm going to use my air quotes, transformed, their customers have already moved the goalpost. And frankly, the longer we take to deliver, the more risk we expose ourselves to in business. And the larger the changes we propose, the greater resistance we face. And that comes especially from the employees within our organisations. So I've been thinking about what is the alternative and how can we move at pace to create greater value for our customers, employees and the business. And I assume that's a word that you're going to hear with every and each one of the keynotes, that value message. So I believe that the answer lies in experience design. And as CX professionals, this is the best news ever, because it means all of the tools we need to help businesses to avoid the pitfalls of transformation are already available to our disposal. So effectively, what CX design does is enable us to have a rapid response to customers and in fact employee problems that yield a business benefit. So it's not the other way around. It's not thinking about business problems and business benefits and how do we generate them. It's thinking about customer and employee problems and how do we solve them. So by discovering how best to solve those problems and co-designing ideas with the people that are going to be affected, as in the people within our organisations and our customers, we can develop solutions with a kind of agility that means we can test and learn as we go. We can prove our return on investment before we actually go to full deployment and launch at scale. And ultimately, it means we're going to be delivering much better products, much better services, and much better experiences. And critically, and we all know this message, the right change at the right time. So effectively, that's what I'm here to share with you today, which is that I propose a hopefully logical, kind of radical fourfold approach to putting people at the heart of change. And I believe it's one that constitutes something that's really pragmatic, efficient and effective as an alternative to improve customer experience rather than by transformation. So in summary, I favour these four things: empowerment over procedure, values over goals, collaboration over control, and lean over large. So for the next 15 minutes or so, I'm going to give you a quick introduction to these four concepts, but also some things that you can go away and think about or ideally implement immediately after today. Hope that all sounds good with you. So the first of our four today is empowerment over procedure. And you know this, we've heard, this is not new news. To create the optimum experiences, we need to respond to our customers with the right action at the right time. But I'm sure you'll also agree with me that employees are often stifled by the procedures that we put in place. So for us to demonstrate this point, if you think about any massive customer complaint, the ones the ones that went completely nuclear and you ended up with bad press and PR, those ones that rapidly escalate, to the decisive moment, if we rewind it right back to that, you'll find some poor soul that could have averted the crisis, but effectively couldn't because they had to follow these rigid procedures. And the same is absolutely true of innovation. Now, I think it's likely that employees, especially on the front line, have already got a really good handle on the real customer problems to solve. Not the ones the business thinks they need to solve, but the real customer problems. But whilst managers spend a lot of time looking at insight or data and metrics to try to find where to start, this really valuable source of ideas goes untapped. So listening to employees is one thing, but actually empowering them to do something about it is quite the other. And I'm sure you're thinking, I've got an employee metrics survey. We listen to them, we think about their engagement, but this difference is huge between listening and actually enabling them to take action. And the fly in the ointment, if there was one, in especially big businesses, and the bigger they are, the harder it gets, is that all the decision-making power sits in a really small number of individuals at the apex of the organisation. So, we're talking about governance groups, the board, for example. So decentralisation of that decision-making could be the key to unlocking latent or unused or underutilised ability within the business to come up with ideas. And I've personally seen this done in huge organisations with like 190,000 employees, which has led to, such rapid improvement and, the best part, happier employees. It has a number of distinct advantages, but one big one of empowerment is it solves the resistance to change that I mentioned at the start. But it all starts with trusting employees, and that is easier said than done. So here's a couple of ways that you can help your employees to do this without creating complete chaos. So, oops, sorry. Oh, yeah. So empowering employees with the right skills and the right tools. So in order for teams to run those discovery sessions, if you remember at the beginning of the curve, they're going to need to be able to isolate and quantify problems for the business to be convinced any of this CX stuff is of any use. And they're going to need the right toolkit and also the training to use it. So great toolkits contain frameworks that support people to rapidly generate ideas and establish costs and benefits, and that's so important. But one of the pitfalls to the effectiveness of this approach is about not having the time or space to conduct these kinds of sessions. So ring fencing resources is absolutely key. So if you're thinking about trying to adopt this approach, you have to have some really direct conversations with leadership. Next is about building an opportunity funnel. So there's always going to be variation in the cost and the complexity of the ideas that are generated in something like a discovery session. And the bigger ideas need to be captured and funneled into broader investment planning. But the ones that are low cost or no cost, I believe, should be given permission, at least to be tested immediately. But the main barrier to behaving in that way is governance. So how can we eliminate that as much as possible? And so that continuous action and improvement can happen. And I've seen it done, literally disbanding the steering groups that are the ones that you have to pass papers up and down to in order to make anything change. Next would be about creating a positive error culture. And these aren't my words, but I've stolen them. Businesses that are afraid to fail to succeed. So it's essential to be able to create an environment where failure is actually seen as a sign of progress. And prepare yourselves. Many ideas will fail, but the reasons that those failures occurred become the learnings that lead to better ideas. So creating these environments where action is celebrated and progress is prized above everything else is where innovation becomes the norm. So for better calibration and empowerment, you can use the next tool, which is to create a set of principles to follow as opposed to goals to achieve. And you will all be so familiar with this if you work in an organisation where employees are given goals or targets. What happens? Well, not only does that behaviour limit can't get my words out today, innovation, but it notably manifests itself in employees who chase the measure. It's my air quotes again. You all must have seen it, when we start taking shortcuts to hit the numbers, and those arbitrary metrics are quite often delivered in the short term. So you can't say that that approach doesn't work, but in terms of creating value in a sustainable way, and that improvement becomes an ongoing thing, can only come from genuinely solving customer problems. So you could take, for example, a multi-billion-dollar retailer I worked for, no prizes for guessing which one it was, where they implemented a mystery shopper program, but the goal was about increasing the store scores, and it worked. The store scores did improve, but these projects and whole kind of cottage industries appeared about passing the measure, which meant that the store scores did go up, but the experience didn't actually improve at all. So by contrast, when we're giving people a set of values or guiding principles, which I think nicely plays back into what Sean was saying about purpose, it can really help to aid decision making, and the job of improving experiences becomes easier and actually more fun, with the added bonus of complementing empowerment with supporting frameworks, meaning that you can improve the quality of the innovation as well. So you can't expect anyone to be able to go out and do this without any tool support or values, but the first 2 points is where it all begins. So next are kind of 3 things you could do. So first of all, I'd advocate really defining what value means, because when decisions start to be devolved from the apex and the leadership teams, providing employees with some guardrails to help them make better decisions is important. It makes really clear common sense to protect the business whilst we're empowering staff, but without real crystal clear clarity, value could be open to interpretation. So you can prevent mistakes by defining and framing things like, what is the desirability to the customer or to the employee, but also critically the business, and use appropriate metrics and impact statements that will help them with that evaluation. But being clear about those measures of success is also going to be beneficial, because you can weed out non-viable things right at the start. So something might be great for customers and employees, but absolutely useless when it comes to delivering the commercials. So we can just forget about those and just focus on the ideas that have the triple benefit. But also to really build our success criteria now, so we can prove return on investment later. Secondly, creating a set of design principles, because once employees have come up with what you could do differently, if you can deliver and give them a set of universal design principles, it will support them with how to bring this idea to life. And design principles, for anyone who isn't familiar, can be written as a set of statements for guidance around strategic, operational, brand and value driven imperatives for the business. So for example, calling out something like solutions that are digital by default will mean that that's the first consideration rather than the last, as is calling out helpful to employees and friction free for customers. Really great ways of guiding design that will work in their best interest. And finally, on this one, articulating the desired behaviours. So I've said that definitions and principles can direct ideas. Having a blueprint for what agile behaviour can look like within your culture and within your own employees can have the same effect. And I think cultural shifts only really happen when employees understand how to behave, but also feel empowered to challenge the status quo. So statements should be aspirational to encourage teams to dare to be ambitious, take action before perfection, focus on delivering value early and often, and work in dedicated, empowered cross-functional teams. Ian, the fact that you've appeared back on the screen, does that mean I'm running out of time?
Well, it's sort of like a subtle, just so
A subtle hint. Okay.
Just so you know. Keep going, Claire, because
Okay.
lots of people are loving you.
Oh, good. Well, we're two points away from the end, so I'll try and canter on. So collaboration over control. So command and control, if you've worked at a big business, that's the way that they operate, because they believe that you've got to keep the soldiers in line. But those kind of high direction and low trust organizations have the power struggle. So, you know, the ones where you have like a department director with one set of objectives and another operational department with something else. And what happens is the experience basically falls down the cracks and people become micromanaged. And I've seen this firsthand. If we're all playing on different teams, the customer and the business never win. So I'm trying to speed up. So 3 things that you can do here is about running cross-functional workshops. So bringing people together to do something like collaborate around a customer journey and see things not from their department point of view, but from the customers or the employees is an awesome way to do it. Creating your CX design toolkits that help the business to see from the outside in, but also the inside out. And that's something we're not so good at as CX professionals, good at the outside in, but perhaps not the inside out so much, with things like personas, user stories, proposition wheels, and our favorite journey maps could be selected by facilitators to inform really awesome activities that bring people together, but also produce really well-structured, high-quality, meaningful outputs. And my final one on this one is just about being able to use those tools to create a vision for the future, because if teams know what they're trying to work towards and it's an experience-based thing, the chance of them working together on the same team is much higher, but also greater efficiency in projects planning and roadmaps too, meaning you're going to deliver value faster. So my final point there brings us to the last point on our four-fold approach, and that is basically that success only comes down to one thing, and that's successful implementation. And transformations so often fail because the projects and the programs become so big and unwieldy, they creak and just fall apart. So compare that to cross-functional teams working to micro projects with a narrow scope and remit. The chance of success is much higher, especially if they're working towards that vision for the future. So 3 things you can do there is to provide project management frameworks, so similar to the CX frameworks, back that up with toolkits with like scoping documents, business cases, success criteria that are really customer and employee focused. That means the apex are going to see what you're doing but not get involved quite so much, which is great. Co-design with users. I can't emphasize this enough, that assumptions are the enemy of any kind of user or customer centric design. So use any chance you've got to you do user research and testing, and really revolutionize the ways of working. So your business is probably starting to work in agile in technology. How can you have that same principle and approach in other places of work and other teams too? Ideally, that kind of methodology of product owners who have unlimited decision making power, where you start to have stand-ups and share the learnings across the groups. So here are my final thoughts. The beautiful thing about this approach is the holy grail of customer experience could be possible, that we don't have to sell customer experience to the C-suite, because the results of our projects will speak for themselves. And because this method focuses on action, and the outputs are going to be so clear that you're going to be able to generate easily measurable returns on investment. So here's a final thought from me, quite a bold statement, but this keynote, I didn't talk about focusing on customer experience at all. I talked about focusing on all of these other things that mean the business drives action. So yeah, remember, customer experience is only an outcome of everything that the business does, therefore focusing on it itself is going to be pointless. So in conclusion, I feel really bad because I think I've been 20 minutes. Although we've been led to believe that transformation is the solution, it is in fact the problem. I hope I've convinced you of this. that large-scale episodic changes don't work because of the cost, the complexity, and the leadership and timescales required to be effective. But by adopting a lean, collaborative approach where teams are empowered to set with a set of values to guide them to succeed, you're going to be able to move quickly to respond to customer needs. And this not only significantly reduces the risks I talked about, minimises the cost and the complexity and timescales, but was also less reliant on needing someone like Steve Jobs to lead you through change. So that's it from me. If you want the white paper, please go to awesome-cx.com, and I'll be sending it out to everybody on the list tomorrow. Thank you.
And breathe.
I'm so sorry that my timing was so off.
Do not apologize. A virtual round of applause on behalf of everyone, Claire. Thank you so much. Again, I always feel slightly horrible having to, shorten people's time frame when they're sharing so much valuable content. And all I can tell you, I'm sure you will look at this very shortly. The feedback again is wonderful. So you've got nothing to apologize for. It's only because I've got to try and keep us under control.
I understand.
When you bring us all together, we could speak for days and days about all of this. But I am going to ask you a quick question, even though let's just fast forward to the 6th of October 2021. What do you hope is different by the time we get to 2021?
Yeah, all I can think of is that I'm allowed to travel again and I can meet people in real life and do workshops. In terms of customer experience, I guess that we've taken a good hard look at ourselves. I think some of the points that Sean raised are really important, that like technology and the companies that provide technology are accelerating faster than we are. So in order for us to catch up in the meantime and be able to really deliver meaningful value, we've been a bit introspective, and we've come back with some new thinking, some new frameworks and some new approaches that we start to implement together.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Claire. And I know that many of you have been inspired by what Claire has said. So please do reach out to her, connect with her on LinkedIn. And in fact, Claire is very active in Instagram, which I still don't quite understand, but I'll leave that domain to Claire. But also please do follow the Women in CX podcast. If you are a woman in CX, Claire, I'm sure would love to interview you as well for that at some stage. And if you want to know more about her approach to customer experience, then please do contact her. So thank you, Claire. It is time for us to move straight on, and this mad pace that we're maintaining today does not slow down.
No worries. Happy CX Day, everyone. See you again.
Happy CX Day, Claire.